Hey everyone, Overlord Moon here. Today we're going to be talking about why I'm not a big fan of guilds in MMOs. And this applies to multiple MMOs. It's not just World of Warcraft, but I will be using World of Warcraft as my primary example since I have been playing that game for 14 years. So, within any MMO, the guild is what makes the game the game. That MMO, that massive multiplayer online experience that's made by the other players. And guilds are normally comprised of like-minded players who like to accomplish any in-game activities together. So like a raid or like a dungeon or PvP, you name it, that's what these people complete together. The issue is that guilds are not as they are portrayed in anime. They're certainly not as portrayed by other people who don't know what MMOs are like. They're not this sort of sunshine and rainbows and everybody gets along together and we're gonna group up and kill the raid boss and get all the loot and it's gonna be so good, because that's not the case. You see, guilds have this dark underbelly to it that you really begin to see firsthand when you get into an officer position. Granted, you don't have to be within one, but it's where I became more aware to what really goes on within these guilds. There's guild drama, there's politics, there's disagreements with the way that things are run, how loot should be distributed, and it's really draining. I mean, having to worry about who your roster is, who you're going to recruit, how those people also represent your guild on the server, because, you know, in a game that not everybody in the country plays, your reputation holds a lot more weight than it does outside of the world. And I think that, side note, this is also why a lot of people seem to get attached and addicted to these MMOs, because they feel as though they have a life there. Back to my main point, is that you really begin to see what goes on with the guilds and the nasty underside. And keeping it real, even being an officer in a guild and being a guild master, it can be a full-time job. Not that it actually is, but the level of commitment needed to sustain a guild of a large population that's very successful, that's continuously beating these in-game objectives, that's what's required. I've been a part of guilds in the past that have been like IRL friend groups, and they're just kind of casually doing the game and they can complete a normal raid tier and not progress any further, and that's how they enjoy the game. And you know what? That's completely okay. Everybody has their own preference of how they like to play the game. So there's this sort of issue where you want to find a group of like-minded players who also enjoy the game in the same facet as you, but if you want to filter out those members specifically and create your own community, well then the only option is creating your own guild and finding those people who think exactly like you. However, creating and running a guild requires a lot of setup work, and it is a huge grind. It is very much exponential. You're not going to be at the limit level. You're not going to be at the liquid level. People are not knocking down your door to apply for your guild. Nobody knows about you and nobody gives a fuck about you. So you have to build a reputation for yourself from square one, which involves a lot of front end work. And if you're really going to enjoy the game at that level, then you also have to accept the responsibility that comes with running a guild. I didn't want this video to be necessarily about running a guild or everything that comes involved with that. The fact that this is why I don't like the guilds. So I'll start with reason number one. Reason number one as to why I'm not a big fan of guilds is that they can be very cliquey. You know that analogy that I made earlier of, you know, those 5 people having played together for like 15 years, and the raid team mainly comprises of people who are like connected to them by like people's, you know, girlfriends or people's friends of friends and mutuals and that stuff. Guilds can become very cliquey, and not just small ones too, but very large ones where there will only be groups of like guild officers that hang out, and these are the people who've known each other for so long, and they have this sort of inner clique, and everybody outside just doesn't fucking matter, and you're just a number for them. These are guilds that I'm not really a fan of. Granted, these types of guilds I've not lasted in very long, because when you recognize that clique, you also realize that in order to develop a connection with these people, it could take several months to even years at that. That being said, you know, I'm just not a big fan of that sort of style. It can feel very isolating. It can feel very just unfun to play the game in general when you're a part of a group that's like that. And I'm very much of the notion where if I'm not having fun, then I'm just going to make a change and do something about it. I'm not going to sit there and complain the whole time. But I do say this because a lot of people do experience this issue where they feel, you know, unvalued, or they feel like they're on the outside of a clique. And so I don't know if If you're not enjoying the game, do something about it to enjoy the game. But this is a primary reason I don't like guilds in general. The second thing is with new guilds, I should say. New guilds have their own issue as well, particularly the ones that are mass inviting people. So they look very active, they look there at the member cap, but nobody knows each other. You'll join their Discord server and there will be like 3 people involved, and you'll be asking them about their history, what their goals are, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm just one guy trying to run a guild, and we're at the max 1,000 members already, and I just started like yesterday. And you're like, okay. So there's clearly no structure, there's clearly no leadership too. And I'm not saying that you have to have a massive leadership in order for a guild to be successful, but having no goals and just trying to be a very big guild is very much not the way of going about it either. I should have just made this video on like how to run a guild, because I know a lot more about that. Well, actually no, I know a lot more about being in failed guilds than I do about in being successful. So back to the focal point of the video, something I really wanted to talk about is guild drama. This is a huge reason why I don't like being in guilds, because it's a massive waste of time. However, guild drama will happen. Regardless of how much you say that your guild is drama free, it's something that's just, it's going to happen. Humans are emotional creatures. They all have their own different ideas of how things should be run, and they all have their different attitudes of how they go about doing. You're going to have those times where you're running a raid team and you've got a DPS that's underperforming. He's in the right gear, he's doing the right stuff, but he's not putting in the work. He doesn't know his damn rotation, doesn't know the mechanics, and so you have to have that difficult conversation with that player that, hey, we're gonna have to bench you. Well, that player's gonna, you know, rage and cause a scene and start calling out people and so forth and so not. So you have to really figure out real quickly how you're going to resolve conflict, and also how you're going to word things and talk to players. I've had a lot of guilds in the past where people would just lose their shit. People would go off their rockers, people would get this huge power trip as though it was like a drug, because they were an officer in a guild and held some sort of power to remove anyone who disagreed with them. Almost like World of Warcraft had the earliest versions of cancel culture. But keeping it real, it wasn't until I was able to get into the guild bad callouts, and this is the old bad callouts. The new bad callouts is full of a bunch of degenerates, but old bad callouts where my friend Zach was running the guild. And rather than just kick players on a whim, he's very, what's the word, confrontational, but not in the bad sense. More like, if there was conflict, he would be very direct with the point. He would not beat around the bush, and he would talk to the person and be like, hey, what's going on? Let's talk about it. And to actually see this level of maturity from a guild master who viewed me as a legitimate friend rather than just a piece on the board or just a healer for the raid, it was something that was really new to me. And I got into so many heated arguments with my friend Zach, but regardless, he took the time to just really invest into me and pour into me and sort of teach me how things were done, how to just be forward with people, how to have these direct conversations and really just squash any beef that arises. And I'm very thankful for that. I'm very thankful that, again, through the people I've met on World of Warcraft, I've been able to develop these sort of social skills that I wouldn't have otherwise. So that's a huge thing that's a real turnoff in regards to joining a guild, is that you're going to have guild drama, but not everybody's the best at resolving it. A lot of people, they either are too passive and they just let things slide because they're afraid of conflict, and the idea of anyone upsetting them or being upset at them is just the worst thing ever. Or you have people that are too horny when it comes to power tripping, and they end up just ruining the whole vibe of the guild and ruining the game in general. This is surprisingly the majority of guilds that I've come across, where it's either on one extreme or the other, and I've only been, like I said, in one guild where that's not been the case over the course of the 14 years that I've been playing the game. Despite my own personal views as to why I'm not a big fan of guilds, I don't think that they're an inherently bad thing for the game. I've met some of my closest friends that I currently have through guilds in World of Warcraft, and funnily enough, I'm actually going to be meeting up with a lot of them in person this weekend for a cool Friendsgiving meetup. It's sad that a lot of them don't play the game anymore, however, I'm really glad that I was able to meet them as friends in the time that I had within the game. And I also wanted to clarify that just because I have my own view of how I want to play the game or what I like and don't like about the game, that doesn't mean that I think you should think the same thing as well. If you are, a big fan of guilds, then by all means, have fun. I really hope that you're able to enjoy the game with a group of people who think like you and have the same objectives in the game. At the end of the day, this is an MMO. Play however the hell you want. I don't care if you're a Mythic Raider or if you're somebody who just likes to do battle pets for the fun of it. And for those of you wondering, as of right now, going into Dragonflight, I don't have a guild to be running in with. I have one friend that still plays the game. That's about it. So the cool thing is, though, with each expansion is that it begins a new journey. So maybe if this YouTube channel gets traction, or maybe if I reconnect with some old people, then maybe I'd consider joining a guild or a community again. But that's the cool thing about the future, is that the rest is still unwritten. So until next time, I'm signing out, but I'm thinking about maybe making either a top 10 sort of video on guilds to avoid, just kind of going over some of the stereotypes, or bitching about how much I hate healing. Again, even though I am a healer and will be healing all throughout Dragonflight. That's the cool part about healing. It's the abuse I sign up for over and over again. Regardless, I hope you all have a wonderful night, and until next time, it's Overlord Moon, signing out.